The question for today is, was this subspace? Hi all, 22-year-old female here. I had sex with my boyfriend, 22 male, and something strange happened. Usually I don't finish, and I'm cool with that. I know I'm particularly hard to please, but I also don't view sex as just the O. It's about the act too. But I finished at the same time as my boyfriend finishing too, and my brain just went so incredibly stupid. Like I was hazy and happy and drooly, and all I could do was nuzzle into him. I was completely nonverbal, just happy and smiling and floaty. What happened? Maybe I just love him, LOL. I don't know.
Interesting notion here. Now we have to get philosophical, right? In the sense that if you've never had a strawberry, how do you describe a strawberry? And so she's had this internal experience. She's using certain words to describe it. And those words correlate somewhat with the way other people describe their experience of something that has come to be called subspace. And so words that are often used to describe it are floating. There's a sensation of drifting. There's a tendency to be nonverbal or unable to communicate. There is usually a sense of connectedness or being tied to the dominant. One of the descriptions I've come across is the notion of being a kite, and you have a string tying you to the dominant who is grounding you, but you are floating, right? And so it is possible that this is subspace. It certainly has some descriptors that correlate with that. But who can tell you that no, that is not subspace, right? Like it's like telling someone who ate something and is describing it to you is like, no, that wasn't a strawberry. Well, I don't know. I mean, the terms you're using seem strawberry-ish. Maybe it was a strawberry. You're asking me what it is you ate. I don't know what it is you ate, right? I can tell you that the descriptors you're using seem to fit what I might describe as a strawberry, but it's very difficult to say just philosophically as to what you experience. However, the other thing you can say is that subspace, as traditionally experienced or described, often occurs in response to an overload of endorphins. Now, it's classically described in terms of pain play, so impact play in response to a spanking or a whipping that will induce this kind of floating, drifting pleasure experience that seems to correlate somewhat to endorphin release. Now, it's entirely possible that orgasm did that for her, right, rather than traditional pain play. So I think it's possible that this was subspace. I also wonder about the need or value of putting that experience into a box of words. Do we need to know that it fits some defined essence of subspace? I don't know that we need to know that. It was a good experience. It was a great experience. I think that's enough to know.
Well, I think maybe one of the reasons she was asking the question, she said it in the end, maybe I just love him, right? And you have to remember, this is a 22-year-old, right? So presumably relatively inexperienced at what love might feel like. And she's wondering that, okay, if she has sex with someone and this is how they feel at the end, perhaps this is Cupid coming, calling, right? And this is the sign of love. The experience was just so intense for her that she's trying to understand it. Right. And I think the most adjacent sort of idea that she has about it, and just so you know, this did come from a BDSM sort of advice subreddit. And so what's left out is if this was a kinky play, it might have been that they were very kinky and in the course of having kink, she ended up having an orgasm. For all we know, she was spanked and a whole bunch of other things were happening, and then they both came at the same time. That's why the word subspace even came up, is she's probably done some reading and self-educating that in the BDSM community that a word like this has come up at all. But it also speaks to the intensity of the experience sometimes for the submissive, because it can be described as mind-numbing, not life-altering, perhaps. It can be. Like
it can be life-altering. I mean, right? I've had girlfriends that described it as similar to their experience with LSD, and maybe borderline hallucinatory. Right, the notion of flying, that feeling of flying, has been. Many of my girlfriends have described that.
I think what may be said to answer her question, which was the very last line, maybe I just love him, is that when you are engaged in BDSM play, the experiences are very intense if you're just comparing them to vanilla sex, right? And then there's a predilection to interpret those experiences as being a source of profundity that perhaps it does not necessarily deserve, right? Beyond just the fact that, or maybe
it does deserve it. Maybe it does deserve it.
So
right?
maybe she
I
is
think
in love, is what you're saying?
maybe she is in love. Maybe love doesn't mean what we think it does, right? Maybe again, all these words are boxes, right? And so it's like maybe the category of experiences we put in the love box should include things that are more transient than we typically associate with what it means to be in love, right? Maybe she was in love with him for that moment. Maybe that doesn't make it any less love. Maybe. Or maybe it does, right? But I think there is a notion there. One of my favorite authors, Robert Heinlein, one of his books is called Time Enough for Love. And one of the claims he makes is that he proposes a man who basically has an infinite lifespan. And he says the thing that he pities those people with a limited lifespan the most is how limited their opportunities are for love. And he said if you had enough time, you could love anyone belonging to that significant majority who were decent and just. And there's an interesting qualifier there, is that the reason we put all these qualifiers around who we love and who we can love is because we're short on time. And we need the experience to be more long-lasting. We need to find partners. We need to set up threads of continuity in our lives to structure those lives. But who's to say that isn't love? I don't know. And maybe they are in love, and this was just an experience layered on top of that, right? In love in the traditional sense, in that I don't know how long they've been dating, right? Maybe they've been dating for 2 years, and she is in love. And this was just a moment of expressing that. Maybe that's why she was able to go this deep, is because she trusts him and has a pre-existing relationship, and thus was able to let go of maybe some of her standard barriers and have this experience of having a mutually simultaneous orgasm, which is relatively rare statistically, right? And yeah, maybe that's just an opportunity to express that love, to experience that love in a different, in a more endorphic way.
Yeah, no, I think that's expanding the definition of love, which I don't have any objection to. But the reason I'm going to push back a little bit over here is that when you are engaged, again, in kink play with a partner and everything is working well, and you have an experience like this, and he also perhaps has his own complementary intensity of experience, confusing that for the kind of love that can build a lifetime of happiness or a lifetime of a relationship, right, is where I would perhaps draw the line. You still are going to have to look at other things, right? Okay, is this person going to be a good complement to my life in these other domains? Or is it because every now and then, he just fucks me so good that I get into Subspace, right? That cannot be the like. No,
I don't know. It depends on how good he fucks you. No, I have an answer for that. I think this is one of the challenges. This is not an issue of love. This is the issue of recognizing that love is only one subcomponent of what you need for a long-term fulfilling relationship, and love is not enough. Maybe she does love him, and maybe that is also completely insufficient for setting up a long-term relationship. And it's only if you make the confused notion that, if you just love someone enough, if you're really in love, then you can make a relationship work no matter what. And that's not true. And if you just say, well, yeah, I really love him, I was really in love with him, and also I wasn't getting what I needed in some other way, and the relationship was not workable. I think those are wholly valid and non-conflicting viewpoints.